Hello everybody, this is Michelle Fox and welcome back to The Simple Quilter. Today I'm going to be showing you how to piece 3 more hearts for the upcoming Valentine's Day. The quilt behind me is a quilt that I made last year with my pieced heart blocks that I showed you last year, and I thought it would be fun again to show you how to make 3 more pieced heart blocks. Don't forget, all of the t-shirts that I wear can be found at the So Many Quilty Things website listed in my description below. The first block I'm going to show you is the simple pieced heart block using squares and half square triangles. The first thing I'm going to show you how to do when making this block is how to make the half square triangles. Now I need a 2.5 inch half square triangle. So the first thing I do, I start with squares that are 1 inch larger. So if I need a 2.5 inch square, then I cut a 3.5 inch square. And this will make 2 half square triangles. Alright, and this is just a little ruler from Creative Grids. I'll put a link for that in the description below. And all you do is you line the little line up here with the corners and you mark your lines. Now these lines are your sew lines. Then you put both fabrics right sides together, and you're simply going to take this to your sewing machine and sew those 2 lines. Now I have already done those 2 there, and then I'm simply going to cut them apart. Just like that. And there are my 2 half square triangles. Then I'm going to press them open and I'm going to trim this down to a 2.5 inch square. Now this is a little bit bigger. I like to make my squares bigger if I can, so I can trim them to the exact size that I need. Now some of you may be concerned about the waist, and that's okay if you are. You can make your squares a little bit smaller, but again, I always make my squares 1 inch bigger. And I do like to use the triangle, the half square triangle paper, but since I had so few of these little triangles to make, I just used the old time method. Okay, so that's how you need to make your half square triangles. Okay, so for this block, you're going to need 8 2.5 inch half square triangles, 6 red 2.5 inch squares, 2 white 2.5 inch squares, and then you're going to need 2 2.5 by 8 inch border strips and 2 2.5 by 12.5 inch border strips. And you're simply going to start laying these blocks out. Alright, we put 2 half square triangles together there, and 2 here to form the top of the heart. Next, we'll just do 4 solid squares. Then we're going to do a half square triangle, a solid square and a solid square, another half square triangle as we're building the bottom of the heart. The 2 solids go in the corner. And then the 2 half square triangles make the bottom. Then once that's sewn together, you'll sew on your first borders, and then you'll add the top border, sewing it down and then flipping and pressing it back, as well as on the bottom, and then your finished quilt block will look like this. Now, the next block I will show you is this pieced heart block using just a few different pieces of fabric cut. And let me show you what you'll need for that. Okay, so you're going to need one 8.5 by 5.5 inch rectangle in the color of your choice. You are going to need one 3.5 by 5.5 inch piece of fabric in the color of your choice. You are going to need 4 2-inch squares, and I chose my background as white. You are going to need one 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch white square. You're going to need two 8.5 by 2.5 inch strips for the border, and two 2.5 by 12.5 strips for the border also. Now in this block we are using a technique called snowballing. Now in order to snowball a block, all you need to do is take your squares and you're just going to draw a line from corner to corner. From corner to corner. And you're going to place them right sides together on your 8.5 by 5.5 inch strip. And you're simply going to sew right along that line. And you're going to do the same with this little piece. You're going to snowball the long side. Snowball the corners of the long side. Right? And again, you're just going to sew right. I actually sew one line width underneath that line, on the line closest to the corner. Okay, so when you're done with that, your pieces are going to look just like this. Then you're simply going to take your ruler, put it on that line, and trim those off. On both of these little pieces of your block. Okay, then you're going to take this to your iron and you're simply going to press those back. Now once you have your blocks pressed, you're going to just assemble them, your little units made, you're going to start to assemble them. Okay, now before you sew these two pieces together, you need to sew these two little pieces together. So you just need to take this to your machine, sew it, and press it so you have a piece that looks just like this. You're going to put that right there like that. Then you're going to line those up, pin them, and sew 1/4 of an inch down there, and then press that open. Then your block will look just like this. You're going to take your border pieces, you're going to sew those on, put those down there, sew them on. Take your other border pieces, put those on, press those out. Then your block will end up looking just like that. And again, the borders make it 12.5. If you need to trim it down a little bit, I trimmed mine down just exactly to 12.5 inches. Here is the next piece tart, and I've just used strips of fabric. These strips are 2-inch strips, and you want to cut your 6 strips to be 2 by 10. We'll be trimming those down later. You will need 4 2-inch squares. my background is white, so you need 4 2-inch squares, and you are going to need 2 5-inch squares. And then also your border pieces, and these are cut 2.5 inches. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is simply lay your pieces out like you'd like them, and you're going to lay them out in groups of 3. And I've made these 2 by 10 inches, and again I'll be trimming these down. Alright, so you're going to sew these 3 together and then these 3 together. And once you have them sewn together, they should look just like this. Then what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to trim off one edge just to straighten it up. I'm going to trim that edge off, and I'm going to trim this edge. Now in the last block, I showed you how to snowball the corners. And you're simply going to snowball these corners. Again, by putting your rectangles at your 2-inch squares with the lines drawn from corner to corner on the ends, just like that. And you're just going to sew across all of those, just like that. Once you have them sewn down, they should look something like this. Then again, you're just going to trim these down, just like this. And just like that. And you're simply going to take it to your iron and press those back like this. Now at this point, remember these were 10 inches, so I take them and then I trim these down to 8.5 inches. The next step is going to be sewing these together. And for me, if you turn this seam down and press that, these seams right here nest better. Then you're just going to pin this. Then you're simply going to pin this. Don't forget to press that seam that little seam right there going down, so those will nest, and you're going to sew 1/4 of an inch right there. Then once you're done, your block should then look like this. Now we are going to take our 5-inch squares and we're going to snowball the block to give it the bottom of the heart. Now I want to show you how I came up with this 5-inch block. So you want to measure 1/2 of the block, and it measures 4 3/4. But you want the 2 blocks to overlap. So the block needs to be 5 inches. So we are going to sew this block on first, just from corner to corner. Okay, so the next step is to trim this off and press that down. After you've snowballed this side, then you're going to snowball the other side. And see how these overlap right here? You definitely want them to overlap because that's going to give you your 1/4 inch seam, so you're not cutting off the tip of your heart. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew right there, just 1 needle width under that line. Okay, I've got that. I've got the second block sewn on, the second square sewn on. I'm going to trim this off, and I'm going to take this to the iron and I'm going to press it down. Now there is our heart. Now this heart, the inside part measures a little bit more than the other 2 hearts, but I still added a 2.5 inch border, and then I just trimmed it down to 12 inches. So I started by sewing on these 2 pieces. Okay, I have those 2 sewn on. I'm just going to take it to the iron and press it out. I did make a mistake on telling you the dimensions for these. These first 2 side pieces are actually 2 inches by 8.5 inches. So be sure you check the description below for all measurements. Then I'm just going to sew these last 2 pieces on and press them out for the final quilt block. Now these blocks can be used to make all kinds of different things. You can use them to make placemats or pillows or snack mats, or maybe you want to put them together to make a quilt like I did my blocks from last year. So in the comments below, I want you to tell me what you would make with these blocks. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you haven't. Share with a friend, and as always, leave a comment below. That has become my favorite part of this entire process. I just love getting the comments, so please be sure to share a comment, and don't forget to let me know what you would do with these quilt blocks. So until next time, have fun quilting.